On this episode of In My Life, it's once more a pleasure to welcome back the very wonderful May Pang. Hello, May.
Hello, Colin. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Great to see you again.
I'm here. I miss being in England, and I am going to be there soon.
Let us know. Let us know. We'll arrange something special if you come over.
Well, I'm going to be there for the International Beetle Week. I
Up
am
in
the
Liverpool, yes,
yeah,
yes, I know, indeed. Well, we'll have to hook up then, that's for sure.
yes.
But today, the first of your three song choices is from Beatles for Sale, or Beatles 6, as it was repackaged in the US, the very
Yes.
wonderful Every Little Thing.
I love that song. Everybody loves the Beatles, and when they say, "Oh, I love the Sergeant Pepper. I love the White Album." Yes, they had now experimented so far into the future there. I preferred how I first heard them, which is all their own vocals, just so very simple. And to me, and their songwriting. And so I love picking the early stuff.
And of course, this is mostly a Paul song, but quite unusual that insofar as John actually sang the lead vocal whilst not writing it.
It's interesting, but you know what? You never know what was going on because I don't know if Paul would have, back then if that was a good one for him. But I like the song. I like you just back in the early days, it's just those little touches. That's what made them such a great team in writing. Even though I know for a fact that yesterday was just Paul. You can tell that is a complete, even though it says Lennon McCartney, it's just a complete Paul song. Um, and it's funny because I actually have hanging on my wall from a thing from BMI, one of the big services here. And it says to John Lennon for the eighth year in a row for being the number one song yesterday. And he said, "Oh God," and he threw it, and he was about to, he said, "Throw this out." And I said, "No, I'm keeping it. I think it's so funny." So it's, so each one got the separate. So I got John's sitting on the on my wall.
Of course, that did get Paul's temper going. I think I can't remember the exact story, but he was somewhere in a restaurant, and because they had these LED displays, it had "Yesterday" by John Lennon, and there wasn't enough room for Paul McCartney. So I think that's what prompted him to change the song order
Can
on
I
one
tell
of
you
his
something? I
live
know
albums.
John would have not cared at all about that. He wouldn't have minded the whole idea of, because he said, when people would say, "Oh, I love yesterday," John goes, "Uh-huh," and he goes, "Okay." And if you saw in the film, he'll say that thrilled him to no end.
And Every Little Thing was recorded just after they got back from their second tour in the US, after they had that famous encounter in August with Bob Dylan at the Hotel del Monaco
Oh,
in
wow.
New York. Don't know if John spoke about Dylan at all much during his
No,
time.
I mean we didn't. I remember Dylan coming over years later to say hello to him, and he came over with George to the hotel. I remember I went, "Oh my God, it's Bob Dylan in this room here." So it's a different time period. Let's put it that way. You know.
It's got those great harmony vocals on the track, but also they use some timpani. Ringo plays timpani on this one to add some very dramatic effects to the chorus on this. Really love it. I think it's the first time they're using sort of unusual instrumentation in their songs. So it's again quite famous for that. And a song George must have been quite fond of because I'm sure you've seen the Get Back documentary, Peter Jackson, and
Yes.
George actually suggests that they play it live on the rooftop. And he describes it as a good one and actually plays the lick.
There's so many little things that go on that we don't know what went on with them, and you hear these little gems in the middle of things, and it's like, oh, okay, what just happened here? I just think, like I said, the four boys, and I call them boys, God, uh, it just brings me back to my childhood. They were so good, so talented, and they were unusual. I mean, they opened up a whole industry. They saved the music industry back then for rock and roll. They opened up the doors for for other acts to come through. And their songwriting was just clever. They were the only act that I know of that every album went a notch over. They kept going up. So that everybody wanted to follow them, wanted to try and beat them, and it was really difficult. And I have a big love for George, and on the next song that we talk about.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And it was, I think they got their MBEs awarded by the Queen for their contribution to British exports as well. So
yes,
not just creatively, but monetarily, they were quite significant.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, it brought the UK into, put them on the map, put everybody on the map. I found myself a pen pal. I remember this girl. She goes, "I don't mind being a pen pal with you," and she would write, and I always got an English girlfriend to write to, and things like that, and it was fun. So for me, who would have thought that I would be part of this scenario, and going into now Liverpool, and I love Liverpool, and my son went to Bolton near Manchester, and that's where, and I lived in London, and so it's all these little things that's happened, and I feel very comfortable in Britain.
Well, we're very pleased to have you. So whenever you're here,
You.
I'm sure you get a warm welcome. And your second choice takes us to the very end of 1917, George's sublime transatlantic #1, My Sweet Lord. This one here. You were working at APCO at this stage?
Yes, I was working at it's APCO Apple because they managed it. So I had the greatest training ground there, because I got a chance to work on all the different publishing companies and all the songs. I mean, you got Cameo Parkway, which was also all those great hits, Dee Dee Sharp and what was it, Question Mark and the Mysterians, Klein owned that. But he also had Cag's Music, which was Sam Cooke stuff. And he had, so those two, and he had the Rolling Stones as well. And then we went to Apple. So all the individual minus Paul, and so then, and the Apple Publishing. So you had Badfinger, Jackie Lomax, Billy Preston. So it's all that. I couldn't have asked for a better training ground for learning about music publishing. So my second song, My Sweet Lord. And the reason I chose it because it was really, George was such a lovely, lovely gentleman. He came into the office and I was like, oh my God. And there he was, bringing under his arm, carrying his masters that he was going to remaster in America for the All Things Must Pass album. He saw me walking down the hall, and he saw me carrying my camera, and he says, and he saw the look. I wanted to take a photograph, and I was kind of nervous. You're standing there, and I was standing with the disc cutter from Apple that he brought with him as well as a secondary to watch. And he goes, you could take the photo, and I did, and then. So I have a picture of him that I took. And I also have a picture that in the end I got with me and George. And when I was I did copyright because I was in publishing. So I was copywriting the album. And when My Sweet Lord was part, I said, I don't know what he's saying. And they said, call him. I said, call George. They said, yes. And I went, oh, I was got nervous. And I called him. He was made me so comfortable. He says, you got your pen and paper ready? I'll recite the prayer for you. I'll tell you exactly what it is. And if you don't get it, ask me and I'll repeat it. He was just lovely. And
he didn't say he's so fine mistakenly for any of the
no, not one bit. And I'm looking at it and thinking, God, I don't hear it as much as he's so fine. It doesn't, you always in rock and roll, and I learned this from John, there's always going to be a bit from somewhere else. There's only so many chords, and it's how you do the configuration. It's not endless. So you're going to just have to, you keep doing it until there's no more. It's all going to just come around again. So You just got to put it together in the combination so nobody says, "Oh, you're stealing." Now, if it's a direct steal, like Vanilla Ice, which when you hear that the beginning, that's a direct steal. You have to pay for that.
Even the English judge in the case, who awarded it sadly to the plaintiffs, he actually admitted they were two different songs, which they are. But you can hear the
Yeah,
similarity
but
if you really want
that's
to.
exactly it. It's a similarity, but
Yeah.
it's not the direct hit. Like I said, I heard Janet Jackson do a song, and I was talking to my daughter, and I heard the beginning, and I kept saying, I know it. I know this part from somewhere. It's a direct lift from somewhere. I know it. I know it. I kept saying, she goes, "Oh, Mom, it's Janet Jackson." And I said, "I'm telling you, I know this one." And sure enough, it was from Ventura Highway by America. And I said, "This is where it's from." And it's like a direct lift out of that. So that's the what is it call it, sampling back
Or
then,
like sampling these days, yeah. They
Yeah.
didn't have sampling back then, did they? So
Yeah. So with the guys, I just think that it's like they reconfigured it. Yeah, there's similarities, but I didn't think it were the same song. That was my opinion anyway.
And George gave My Sweet Lord originally to Billy Preston to record because George was co-producing Billy Preston's second Apple album, Encouraging Words, but it didn't do so well for Billy as it did for George.
Right. It's weird that when the boys try to encourage other people and other artists, it never really took off as much as for themselves. But I just think that I love when George did what was it, the Dylan song, If Not For You, so there's, and you wouldn't think that it was a Dylan song because he's so, I hate to say it, when he sings, so depressing to me. There's only one Dylan song that I love, and that's Positively Fourth Street. He that's amazing song to me. The words in that, it's great. It's a great hit you in the face, and in that type of song. But it's nice when George does it, so it doesn't sound so. It sounds really
Speaking
upbeat.
as a respected photographer, what did you think of the moody picture sleeve photo? I think it was taken by Barry Feinstein, I think.
I know, and then that's why some things just don't work. I didn't know until even recently. Here, how stupid can I be? That my photo of John, it's a picture I took of John that he used for the 45 for Imagine single in the UK, was released on my birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he asked if he could use it. That was his favorite photo, and I said sure, and I had no idea, and there it was. You know, so I have actually had two quote covers because Julian's latest album, Jude, that's a picture I took of him as well.
I know. I love that photo as well. Just finally, on My Sweet Lord, did you see George perform the song on his 1974 North American tour?
Yes, I saw. Well, John and I actually, John told George, if you need my help, I will get on stage for you because that tour was having a hard time in America, and it wasn't well received. So John offered, and so John turned to George and says, I like to go see the concert just so I can get a feel in case you may need me. And we went to the concert out in Nassau Coliseum, and so we did see it. And of course, I did see that later on in Bangladesh, and early on with Bangladesh. So I've seen different ones, so I'm okay. And I that's one of my favorite songs every time I hear it. So it was good. And then it was nice because the one in Bangladesh he did with Pete Ham. So
And he
it
didn't
was
have a sore throat when he did Bangladesh as well, which plagued him during the 74 tour, sadly.
Yes, and that in fact, it was quite funny. We had just seen him in the whole thing, and when we got to the concert, Ravi was going to open up. He was the opening act, and they said, "Oh, Ravi's not going to be doing it tonight." And John goes, "Oh, good. All right, I don't have to hear that too." Not that he didn't like Robbie, but it was going to be one of those long, long nights, and he didn't want that. So it was good.
And for your third and final choice, May, I know you were torn between two songs from John's 1974 Walls and Bridges album, both of which had a very direct connection for you. I've no idea which one you're going to choose. Did you go for Number Nine Dream or Surprise, Surprise, Sweet Bird of Paradox?
That is so hard because they're so. Um, Here's the thing. Surprise, Surprise was the first song that was written on for that album. And it wasn't even for an album yet, but that's the first song that was written. And Number Nine Dream was the last song that he wrote and that put on that album. So it's kind of hard because the first one is about me and he wanted me to hear it. You know, John says, he goes, I want you to hear something. And I'm looking at him as he's playing it to me. And I'm like, I'm speechless because I'm thinking, he just wrote a song for me and I didn't even know how to react. So that's something that to let you know, I didn't know how to react, you know, because I never had anybody write a song for me. And then of course, Number Nine Dream, he wanted me to be on it. So that's my voice on it. I know a lot of people were confused because in the official video, it's not me doing that. It's actually you know, Yoko mouthing his you know, the whispering, but it's my voice.
Well, the sleeve notes are very clear. They do credit you on the sleeve notes, so there's no doubt about that at all. And there's some great players on both tracks. You've got Nicky Hopkins, Jesse Ed Davis, Klaus Foreman, Jim Keltner, Bobby Keys
Arthur
on
Jenkins,
horns.
Nikki, yeah, I mean, you know, it was
Amazing.
we had Bobby Keys doing the horns, you know, we got we got a lot of mixture. It was a lot of fun. It was quick. The Walls and Bridges album was John was so most proud of because from the time he started to the time he finished was 8 weeks, complete, handed into to Capitol Records. So he was so thrilled. He goes, "I got it done in 8 weeks." So here we are doing that on one side, and we finished it and handed it in, and he was just thrilled.
And that was the same with almost all his solo albums. He was a fast worker, wasn't he?
Yes, he didn't like, you know. So that's why when people say, "Oh, he was so drunk," and you can't work under those circumstances. And he used to tell anybody who was coming in, listen, if you're going to do anything, and you know, in the sessions, please do it, save it till after we're finished, because it's hard enough that, you know, to learn something new. And so he would tell, and everybody was very respectful. They came in, they didn't, they didn't touch anything. There was one time years earlier, one of the musicians um, missed the timing to be, because when he would call for the time, he goes, in, you got to be in. He wanted you in and ready to move, and this musician didn't make it. And he goes, where is he? And I said, I don't know. He goes, find him. And I went looking and I called up and I said, do you know what time it is? And he goes, no, he's just waking up. And I said, it's this hour, it's 7. And it was now 7:30 or 7:45. And he goes, oh my God, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And, you know, and it never, he walked in and he said, I'm sorry. And he goes, and John says it with a smile, but when John would give you that look and says it with a smile, you know what he means. And it was a cutting look. He goes, don't let it happen again. And he meant
And
it.
they
It never
didn't.
happened. Yeah, never happened again.
And
Never
on
happened.
Surprise, Surprise, those incredible musicians I mentioned were also joined by Elton. And I understand he has some problems recording the harmony vocals.
Yes, he couldn't get the harmony right. And it was a really tough part for him that John listened to it over and over and he goes, don't like it. Let's just take him down. So, and they spent hours trying to put it together, and Elton, and it just didn't work for John. And in the end, he just says, I don't want it. You know, let's just leave it. And he did what he had to do.
He seems to be buried quite low in the mix, Elton. Like it's hard to hear
Yeah,
much.
it's so, yeah, it wasn't something that he wanted from because he couldn't match that harmony that he wanted. John, a lot of people have no idea that John, this was the first album he was completely the actual producer. And he, knowing that he was his own producer, he knew what he wanted. He had it all just sitting in front of him, and then and it was done. And it's his only #1 album with a #1 single in
Did
his
he
life.
feel, bearing in mind he was so much more involved in this project than maybe the other solo projects that he participated in, was there extra pressure on him? I remember at the time we was joking that even Ringo had 2 US #1s before John. As you
Oh,
said, the
I think
first #1 he
he had a
had.
#1 before anybody. I think
Yeah.
he had more #1s. I don't think it's the fact that John wasn't more involved. I just think this was just so much of his own for the first time as a solo. He wanted to be it. It was him, and he really took pride in that, as he did also in Mind Games. It was really him doing it, and in the end, that's why when we were doing the rock and roll, he just said to Phil, "I only want to be a singer." Because it was so much work. Unfortunately, he had to take that back and finish the album.
Yeah, it's great. May, thank you very much. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for sharing your three, well, maybe four choices. You seem to have sneaked one in there at the end. Thanks again, and look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. All the
You
best.
too. Thank you.
Bye bye.